Hello, Train Effective family, and welcome to this very special podcast we have here today. My name is Nixon. I'll be your host today. And I say it's a very special podcast. Why? Firstly, because we do have the founder of Train Effective, Nick, here himself. How you doing, Nick? You okay?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. But I'm more excited about who we got here today.
Yes. I'm about to move on to that. So we have got here today Soheil, who is here to share his very special story, a story which I think is very inspirational, and I know that our viewers would love to listen to his story. So how you doing, Soheil? You okay?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to share the story and chat with the people today.
Of course, it's great to have you on. So we'll get stuck in straight away. So I wanted to sort of start right at the beginning, and I wanted to ask, what was sort of some of your earliest football memories, or what was it that sparked your interest in football from the get-go?
Yeah, so parents, I guess it was like the sport growing up, like my dad kind of played it. He was a volleyball player too, but I have an older brother, so he started playing it. So I kind of just got into it. I started at 8, 9, I played for fun, just because all the kids played, so we would play at recess and stuff. And then I had a year of playing in this team setting in Austria, because I was born in Austria before I moved to Canada. And then I remember I broke my leg skiing. So that was pretty bad. So I couldn't play football for like 2-3 years. And then we had to move over to Canada. And then probably my first memories of actually playing were closer to like 12, 13. I played recreational in Canada. So that was like once a week. You play with the kids, the parents would bring watermelon slices, all that good stuff. So had some good fun there before trying to work my way up the levels.
Right. Okay. So then, going off that, did you have a team you supported when you were younger, or did you have any idols or football players that you looked up to?
Yeah, so my team has always been Bayern because I was born in Vienna, Austria. So obviously close to Austria, the main team is going to be Bayern. So I've always looked up to that team. And then back in the days, like I have slight memories of the 2006 World Cup. And my player was always Bastian Schweinsteiger. So a lot of like young kids don't know who that is, but legend of the game. He was a beast. He was a beast.
He was
at
a
Germany,
baller
at Bayern, and I remember he had this really good game in the 2006 World Cup. I think it was against Portugal, where he scored a hat trick or something. But he's always been my guy before Ronaldo just started skilling it up at Man United, and then I've always had him as my player.
Hey, awesome. So let's like talk about. You said 12 to 13. You're playing recreational in Canada. Now I know there are 12 and 13-year-olds or people that were 12 and 13 listening to this, and they weren't playing recreational at 12, 13. They're like trying to be the next Messi or Ronaldo. They're training 7 times a week, or like. So you're saying that recreational, like you're playing like maybe a few times a week at that age?
Yeah, so we had one game a week, and then we had one day where the team would train. But it was so unorganized. Like it would be a parent volunteer coming out, and the training sessions were terrible. I did that for like 2 years at 12. It's crazy because now, obviously, if you want to go and play at the highest youth level, starting at you have kids starting at 6, 7, 8, 9, and if you're training 4 or 5 times a week in a high level youth academy, you have such an edge. So I get a lot of messages from kids at like 14, 15 asking if it's too late. And although you really do need to take things serious and you do need to carve a path for yourself, my journey kind of shows that you can still push up to a very high level, even if you started late. It just depends on the move you make.
I mean, we're gonna dive plenty into that, but I'm so fascinated by it because 12, 13, and of course you're getting players messaging you. They message us at Train Effective as well, saying it's 13, 14, 15, 18 too late. I mean, you're older than those numbers, and the fact that you're playing recreational and it wasn't your sort of number one thing, it seems, at that age, I think it's going to make for a remarkable story, which we're going to get into. But man, I'm fascinated. So cool. Okay. Yeah.
Definitely cool. I did want to go back a little bit as well. So you mentioned that you were born in Austria, and then you moved to Canada. You said when you were 8 years old, you say?
Yeah, around that. Yeah, we had a trip over, and then we came back, and then we went again.
Right. Okay. So you testing it out first, went back, and it was like, yeah, we want to live there. I like it. Yeah. So talk to me about that move. Obviously, you as a child, what was that like, and what were the difficulties that came with that move for you?
The most difficult part was leaving your friends at that age. Like if anybody young is listening in, they can definitely relate. You have your friend group at that age, and when you leave it, it's very, very difficult. So when we first moved, I remember my biggest challenge was in Austria, you learn German. So I learned German. I can speak German. I didn't know any English. So they teach you the basics. So I had a couple words, but I went to Canada. I didn't know English, didn't have any friends, completely new culture. So the first while in Canada was very, very difficult because it was all about trying to integrate. And I remember my first day of school, we're all going to school and we're all in this lineup. And the kid in front of me turns around. He's like, "Hey, how are you?" And I didn't even know what to say. So I just kind of stayed quiet. So that was my first experience of coming to Canada. Didn't speak English. Parents came over, had to try finding their jobs. And I was young, so I didn't really realize the extent of what was going on. And then also I was on a broken leg. So I'm going in crutches around school, trying to learn English. They put me in the ESL program, so English as a second language. So I was also like separated from the kids, had to learn English, had to learn French too, and just tried to make friends. So that first stage was pretty challenging.
Right, and you kind of touched on it there as well. But obviously, you moved with your family. You say you're with your brother and your parents. What was that
Yeah.
like for you? What can you remember? What it was like for your parents and sort of how they dealt with the move, and did that impact you at all or your brother at all?
Yeah, it was really difficult because my parents came to Canada. There was two main focuses. One, can we find the same jobs in Canada and build ourselves up there? And then also the education for the kids. So I have pretty traditional parents that really value the academic route. So we were really focused in on that. And coming to Canada, both my mom and dad, they were grinding like crazy for years and years, like working overtime, working two jobs just to try and get us sorted. So relating this to football, when I first came, like football wasn't on the radar at all. It was kind of like just, learn English, get into the school system, try and make friends, and then go from there. It was only, I remember, I think in a park or somewhere where my mom was talking to another parent at like 12. And then she finally found out about this thing called recreational soccer, which was happening like once a week. There's one game, one training. So it was pretty low maintenance for someone like her who was working two jobs, grinding like crazy. And that was the only way I finally shifted to doing some type of organized football at that age.
Mm. It's great to hear that sort of like, how much your parents were grinding to really make sure that you and your brother had a great education. That's a great story. But so then you say you broke your leg around the time you'd moved to Canada. Did you break your leg in Canada? Or how did that go down? And like, how long did it take to recover and sort of be able to do the normal stuff
Yeah.
again?
It was on the last ski hill going down in Austria. So we had a ski trip. I remember. It's always the last.
Right.
It's always the last ski, the hill too. So I was coming down, and I actually like kind of collide with my best friend, and I fall, and I was like young, so I didn't know what happened. But all I remember was they had one of those like ski car things come up, pick me up, and then they brought me down, went to the hospital. They casted me up, and then yeah, we had the trip over to Canada in a cast. I remember that pretty well. And yeah, it was kind of like just grinding coming to Canada. I remember the airline, like in the flight, they basically told us like you need to buy two seats for me because you need the
Yeah.
seat in front of you needs to be like reclined so that I can kind of have extra space for my legs. And my parents just they negotiated at the time just to kind of just go with one seat, and we made it happen, and we just went over with one seat, and I just kind of made it work. But yeah, so broke my leg in Austria and then came to Canada, and it was pretty challenging, like being on crutches and being completely new to the country.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So they hustled the one seat in the end. They got you there in one seat. So not only were you moving countries at 8 years old, but you actually did it with a broken leg as well. So yeah, I completely understand that. So you say you didn't really,
Yeah,
play necessarily organized football up until you were, 12 years old, which, in a lot of countries, especially that's quite late on. Some kids start playing really, really young. So
yeah.
talk to me about that sort of progress, how you went on from, not playing so much to then playing a little bit at 12, and then where it got to where you one day realize, right, this is a dream of mine. I really want to try to really push for this.
Yeah, so started with the recreational soccer in Canada, and that was pretty much just like playing for fun. So I would play, and I really enjoyed it. Like I played a lot at recess and stuff, so I was actually decent compared to the kids in my school. So I would play that, and then it was, I think, grade 8. I remember grade 8 gym class. One of the kids came up to me and said, "Listen, we are looking for this one more player on our competitive team for the summer. Do you want to come and try out?" And I had no idea what competitive even meant at the time. So I go and try out, and this was the lowest level of competitive soccer. It was called L5
Okay.
in Canada. And so I try out. I remember like super nervous that first day. And actually, let me backtrack quickly because before this, I went to a competitive tryout at this club. It was probably 6 months before that. Yeah, I remember this moment. And my dad took me out. There were 2 sessions. I went to the first session, and it was a completely different vibe because I was playing recreational at the time. This is competitive soccer trials. So kids are a bit more like they're not as open, they're not as chill. So they're taking things a bit more serious. And the first day, I remember I barely touched the ball. Like we do the warm up, we're running, like I'm not talking to anybody. We're playing the game. I'm barely touching the ball. And it was so I didn't like the experience at all. After the first session, I was like, Dad, like I'm not going to the second one. So I didn't go to the second one. And I thought like, nah, that's it. I'm just gonna stick to recreational. And then that grade 8 gym class, the guy's like, hey, we're looking for a player. I go out to that tryout, and that kind of started the competitive journey. I do that one training session, and turns out the coach was Iranian at the time too, so it worked out pretty well, and invited me out a couple more times, and finally joined that team, which was the lowest level at the time. And then from like 14 to around 16, each year I worked my way up one level of competitive soccer to then being at the end of high school where I had the dream and the goal of going pro, but I didn't really have any direction of how to do it. And the parents having, a lot of pressure on academics too. That's kind of when I shifted into university soccer at the time.
Right. So you said that it was grade 8, you said?
Yeah. Grade 8, it was gym class. I remember I
Right.
got the invite.
And so just for our UK listeners, how old in grade 8? Is that 14 years old?
I think I'm about to turn 14.
You're about to turn 14. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you go from sort of like playing it for fun, playing it sometimes at 12, then a bit more serious at 14. And then you say by
Yeah.
the time you finished high school, so what, 16, 17?
Yeah, around that age.
You really thought of, okay, right, so this could be potentially something that I want to try push for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. So then you mentioned about sort of, your parents sort of the pressure coming from them to sort of push on education wise. So what was that like for you in terms of telling your parents, telling your family that I really love football and this is a dream of mine and I really want to push for it? What was that conversation like and how did they take that?
And by the way, Soheil, it's like I'm your mother or your father right now. Like, Soheil, are you crazy? You're 16, 17. You should be focused on going to the school, university, get
Yeah.
good grades, son. What are you thinking about?
Yeah, so basically, because I had that whole pressure, I always made sure I'm getting the grades. So high school for me was good. I'm getting like the A's. They're happy with things. And anytime I would try and do something a bit more serious in football, they would kind of turn it down, obviously because it would take the focus away from going to university and pursuing academics. So I didn't know anything about like pro football at the time. So I thought, okay, like I'll graduate high school. I remember I had this thought. I'm like, okay, I'll hop into like an MLS academy and then I'll go to the first team. Like that's my plan. But I didn't know anything about how it worked. So at the time I just knew academics was so important in the family. So let me go to university and let me try and find a setup where I can also play soccer, where I can play football at the time as well. So I basically applied to like Carleton University, U Ottawa, University of Toronto, Queen's University, like all these top universities. in Canada, and I got into all of these universities, but I decided to go with Carleton University because it was, again, like local, so you wouldn't have to pay like for residency and all this stuff, which is pretty expensive. And because I did so well in school, I got a ton of scholarships. So my first year was like covered, and I made money going to school, which was pretty cool.
Whoa.
So that is, yeah, kind of how it went. Then I went to university, and they were happy with that because they knew I was getting my degree. So,
Right.
and then the next couple of years went on, and there was some more friction. But yeah.
Hey, can I butt in here though? Like, let's just put ourselves in the shoes of typical person who's listening at the moment, typical player, right? So probably
Yeah.
teenager. Like, so anyone that's listening to this right now, maybe they're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 14, whatever. And I know at this stage, because I've been through the same thing, you're getting older. Maybe you've just, the last year you've been training really hard, but a year ago you were just recreational. Maybe you didn't even play the sport at all. And I think the hardest thing at this age is the self-doubt, is the wow, there are millions of players that are probably better than me. Why do I have this dream or this ambition? Like, why do I have this goal of trying to do something which only 0.01% can actually achieve? You have to be like, how did you deal with those voices, Soheil? Whether it's from parents or other kids, or did you just lock away this dream and kept it to yourself? Did you tell others? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, definitely kept it to myself the first couple of years of going on the journey, because I've been documenting this for like 2.5 years, every single day, pretty much. So I've shared it with everybody. But before that, there's like 5, 6 years of going at it just by
And
myself.
and that's right. Like, for everyone listening,
Yeah.
I've known Soheil for like probably 5 years now. And I remember
Yeah.
looking at Soheil's Instagram because I was doing the 100-day challenge 5, 6 years ago. And I remember I got this message from this guy who said he's from Austria and his name is Soheil, and we should chat and things like that. So I remember looking at your Instagram, dude, and I saw this guy grinding in an Austrian gym.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay, this guy's really grinding, this guy's hustling. And I think that puts in perspective, guys. Like, Soheil, before this whole TikTok like journey, dude, he was grinding already. And that's just a message to everyone. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a few years. It takes years and years. And I'm sure you're gonna get into that. But yeah, please keep going. So
Yeah, that was also a big factor in those years. Like, I would do a lot of training on my own to be able to catch up, because when you start so late, you're so behind the starting line, you have to do something to try and get ahead. So I remember before school, like in Canada in the winter, I don't know how it is in the UK, you guys tell me, but basically in the winter, you have like 8 hours of daylight. Like, the sun goes up really late, it's snowing, so bad weather. So I would like wake up, I'd have like half an hour of, not even, to be honest, it was pretty dark. So I would go train at the field, and I'll go do my zigzag dribbling, and that was my main thing, like just doing dribbling, because it was just by myself at the field. And then I would go to school, and then school would end, and that's when you would kind of have like a half an hour, 45-minute pocket where you still have light before it gets dark. And there's no way of like turning on the floodlights at the time unless like you book the pitch, which I wasn't gonna do because it was too expensive. So I would go right after school and maximize that time and do some more dribbling. So I think it's a pretty similar vibe in the UK, right? In terms of like the opportunity to be able to train in the winter.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're the same. Like we don't get a lot of day. Like in the winter, by like 3, half 3, 4 o'clock, it's going dark. So yeah,
It's
I
dark,
completely
yeah.
understand.
These are
Yeah,
some motivational stories for the players listening right now. Like, I remember I moved to Budapest, Hungary, from Australia when I was 15. And it was 16 when I said, all right, I'm going to try to become a pro. I'm going to put in all these hours of work. I got to put in 20 hours a week of training. I got to hustle, hustle, hustle. So I also went to like a very academic focused school. And what I did was, like, I would take the bus to school in the morning. I'd arrive around 7:30 because school started at 8:30 or 9 or something. And make sure I got like an hour or hour and a half of training in. Because that's when it was light. There was light there. School would happen. I'd play at lunchtime, get my hours in, train, like play with the guys. So I'm transferring the individual skills to the team. And then school would end. And then I knew that when school ended at 3:30, I had like an hour max of light. And I'd have the balls, like there was a field at the school, and I'd have my balls hidden in the bush, and like I get the balls, come out, do training, make sure that was all done before dark. There was times as well, just to give the young guys here out and girls some ideas of what you can do if it's too dark. You can always use a basement. I would go in the basement. I would literally dribble and train with the ball. Dude, I would use street lights, street lamps. I would go out on the street, look for a lamp, and do it that way. I'd visit squash courts. Like squash courts are really good for training your touch and your passing. So I'll go to squash courts and gyms. And lastly, I would get the floodlight. Right, there was like a small floodlight that my parents had, and I put it in the garden, and at 4:30 5 p.m. I'd turn the floodlight on and just train. And where there's a will, there's a way. People always complaining it's too cold, there's not enough light outside. Guys, you can do it. You got this.
So it's all about creating your own luck, isn't it? Yeah, you got to put the work in. So Soheil, you said that.
Yeah.
Oh, go on.
No, I was just gonna say, like, that's what it comes down to is you can either complain or you can find a way to still make things work. Like the whole example about training outside of team training, Nick, that you put in the grind and stuff. All of, even like when COVID hit, like I would always be in my basement just putting in extra work and just doing whatever I can to try and improve. And I honestly think those sessions just compounding over time, over a couple of months and over a couple of years, that's what then makes the difference when you're on the field with all of these other players. Because many players, like, they have the team training, but it's like, what's going to separate you on the field? Because if you want to play at the highest level, everybody has a baseline of the passing, the basics of the game. But typically you need to have one or two areas where you really stand out if you really want to go and play at a high level. And the way you are going to be able to stand out in those areas is if you put in extra work on your own. So I think for anybody listening, quick audit right now is how often are you training on your own every single week? And what is the quality of that training? And if you can add something to your toolkit where it separates you on the field and allows you to be an impact player on the field, that's something that scouts, coaches, and agents are going to be looking for.
Bro, this is true, so true, and you can share your own story about this. But for those of you guys who don't know, me and Soheil actually share a very similar story. So we both started pretty late. We didn't have this ambition of trying to play at a high level until late as well, like 15, 16, this kind of age. So we had to work our butt off to really improve and really put in the hours. Because the thing is, everyone, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, you start off at recreational or amateur, then you go maybe semi-pro, or you start trying to play in an academy, and you work your way up the leagues, and at every single level there's a new challenge, and usually it relates to speed of play, it's more physical, and things like that, and you got to adapt to every single level. And I think one thing I always realize personally, Soheil, and I think I want to know what your star qualities are as well. For me, ever since young, it was always my shooting. So I knew people will always comment at all levels, wow, you got an amazing right foot. And I knew that every environment that I'll go to, whether it was going from recreational, semi-pro, to training with the first team, or tryouts and things like that, it's all about, all right, what quality can I display? For me, that was my shooting ability. And I wanted to make sure that every day I was working on trying to get into positions where I could strike the ball, trying to get in positions where I could score, trying to get in positions where I could take a shot from 20 yards, because I knew that is the difference maker, and that's what I would work on every day. But what were your qualities that you really focused on, Soheil?
So my main thing was dribbling, because that's what I would always do when I did extra training. I was on my own, so I would kind of just go to the field. And I remember I had this one drill. It was like the zigzag dribbling drill. Like, it's pretty basic, but it's all about repetition and how seriously you do it and how often you do it. And so I really developed that over the years. And throughout, like, going from recreational to like competitive and working my way up, I'd have a lot of moments where I'd like be dribbling 2, 3, 4 players, and I'd score a goal or I'd make a play. So that was always my thing. Obviously, once you get to like the higher levels, you have to be more careful with how you use those skills. And yeah, but I would say that's my main thing is dribbling and then playmaking when I'm facing the field. I love combining with the winger and doing 1-2s and all that.
And dude, I have another one for you, because when you get to the high levels, it's like you also test it on your weaknesses, and you see that some things that you're weak at, bro, do they really get exposed when you're at the higher levels? What were those for you?
So I remember there was this one trial I had in Austria, right? It was so funny. It wasn't funny at the time, like when I was going through it, but like looking back at it, it was funny. So they isolated certain skills, right? So you couldn't get away with anything. So I remember in the opening part of the session, we were doing technical work before going into possession and then small-sided games and all that. And in the technical section, I was very confident. We were doing one-touch passing, two-touch passing. Then we increased the distance. We were doing aerial stuff. And I trained this like crazy all the time. But one thing I didn't train enough at the time was doing long balls with my weak foot. So one of the drills they specifically did was they had us like 30, 40 yards apart, and they put a box around each player, and it was pairs of two. This was just the technical part of the trial. And the right foot, fantastic, right? And I see the other players, we're all getting 8, 9 out of 10 spot on. The weak foot, these guys are still 6, 7 out of 10 are spot on. But for me, it was like every second shot would, like, I'm just going to be honest, it just wasn't on point because I didn't train it at the time. So you have to, as a player, you have to make sure the whole spectrum of skills, you have it covered, because if not, you're going to get into those environments and you're going to get exposed. At your current level, it might work, but if you do want to climb to the next level, they're going to, tap into every single skill set. So you need to make sure you have it.
Yeah, one more thing I'll add to this before we move to the next thing, and because I think it's so useful for every single player listening, whether you're pro or just getting started. I once had a chat. I talked for 2 hours, like sat down at the table with Rene Mullenstein, who was the assistant to Alex Ferguson at Manchester United. So it was just me and him at a table. And what Rene is famous for, you can Google this, guys, Rene Mullenstein and Cristiano, right? So obviously, when Sir Alex Ferguson was at Man United and Rene Mullenstein was there, Cristiano was also there, and he was at the peak of his powers. They're winning the Champions League, etc. And Rene Mullenstein, when I was sitting down with him, he's like, there was a time when Ronaldo had, I think, 2 or 3 weeks off due to like a red card. And so he had all this time just to train individually. And what Rene was saying to me was he basically, he had a piece of paper and he sat down with Ronaldo and he said, all right, Ronaldo, I want you to rate your abilities out of 10 on all these different criteria. So he had the paper and every row was a different skill. So it's like dribbling with the ball, or speed of dribbling with the ball, speed without the ball, left foot finishing in the box, left foot finishing outside the box, right foot finishing inside the box, right foot finishing outside the box, heading. You guys get my drift. One-on-ones, one-on-one defending. So maybe there are 20, 30, 40 different things that he was listing out, and he asked Ronaldo to rate himself out of 10 on all of those. So Ronaldo rated himself. Everything that was under 5, Rene said you have to get it to a 5 because that's the minimum at a pro level. Otherwise, you're too exposed. Even as a striker, you still have to have some defending qualities. And so he says you have to get everything to a 5. Now, Ronaldo, on his strengths, on his star qualities, he said his shooting, his speed, his dribbling, these were 10s. And 10 is like world-class, undeniable legend status. And so he's rating himself a 9 or a 10 on these things. And that's what Rene Mullenstein said to focus on. We're going to focus on bringing these 9 and 9.5 to a 10s. We're going to focus on these strengths, and we're going to bring everything that's below a 5 to a 5. And it's that same season they worked together. Apparently, don't quote me on this, but apparently, after they worked on that, this is the season when Ronaldo won the Champions League, Man United won the Champions League. You guys might remember Ronaldo's header against Chelsea in the Champions League final 2008. So that season, I think he scored like 40 plus goals. Like it was a major breakout season for him.
45, I think.
45, right? You know better than me, Mr. Man United fan. But look, this is the thing, guys. It's all about the training, all about assessing yourself. This stuff does not happen without purposeful, deliberate practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think I'm surprised Ronaldo didn't rate himself a 10 out of 10 for everything, knowing his confidence and his mentality, to be honest. No, but I think you guys are both spot on. I think if you don't do as much, if you do the same amount as everyone else, how can you ever expect to excel? And you have to make sure your whole game is complete and like you say, so you're not exposed anywhere. But going back to your story, sort of, so you said that you still completed your degree, and so you done that side partly for your parents, but also because you say you were doing well in academics. But so you're now at Golf United. But talk to me about your journey before then. So when did the trials start? How many did you go to? How many said no before you finally got to where you are now?
Yeah, there's such a long list, but if I had to recap, so even before university, I would once I knew I want to take soccer serious and to the next level, I would go to like we had Ottawa Fury at the time in Canada. This was our professional club before they folded, and now they're Atletico Ottawa in the CPL. And I would go to these academy tryouts, and I would get cut. I wouldn't make it. I went like 3 times, and I was so excited every single time. Every 6 months, they would announce their next trials, and I would sign up right away. But I never made it. Had a couple things like that throughout the years, and then once I became like 18, 19, that's when I started traveling and pursuing football overseas. And I pretty much went to around, I want to say 10 to 15 different football clubs. And out of those football clubs, a couple of them, the majority of them, it didn't work out. A couple of them, they basically were interested and wanted to take me on. Some of them I signed contracts with in the past, but it was a lot of just bouncing around from club to club and a lot of different rejections. And then if you go a level deeper to even getting those opportunities, it was this I can confidently say in the hundreds of messages and emails sent out to even create those opportunities. A lot of players complain, I don't have anything, I don't have an opportunity, I can't get a trial. But what are you actually doing to create an opportunity for yourself? The 99% of us, we don't have the network, we don't have the connections growing up in football, so you have to be proactive with things. So for me, I remember 2000, this was like second year of uni, I got cut from the soccer team actually, and now I didn't have anything. And within 8, 9 months later, I'm playing against Borussia Dortmund B team in a preseason game in Austria, right? So going from having nothing to making that happen, if you go through my inbox, there's like hundreds of emails that I would send out, and 99% of them just got ignored. But all I needed was that one yes. And that one yes eventually took me over to Austria after my final exam at the time. And then I bounced around a couple clubs and signed with that club at the time. So in the last couple of years, a lot of rejections, but you got to be able to get by them to make it to your success.
One quick story on that. I'll be like 30 seconds with this, but basically, like, I had the same exact experience. And again, a lesson for all the players listening: it's a numbers game. It is such a numbers game. You need a list of 500 before 5 actually reply, and then 1 actually says yes. 500, 5, 1. That is literally the math, guys. Like, people are contacting these clubs left, right, and center. You think yourself and your friends that want to play for these clubs, and multiply that by 1,000 around the world, all these countries, everywhere. So it's just a numbers game, guys. And most people, 99% will say no. It just takes that 1% to say yes. I did exactly the same thing when I found 500 or 600 emails once of all these clubs around Europe. And I contacted literally every single one. And basically, it's a long story short, it's emails, LinkedIn, all this stuff. But one replied that was a scout at a club in Holland called Volendam. And that's how I got an opportunity. I was training with players that same week they were going to play against Ajax B team. They were playing against Utrecht B team. These are some of the best players in Holland. And that all comes from hustling and making opportunity. Like you said, it is such a numbers game for everyone listening. Numbers.
Yeah, and then also one thing I want to add is the emails, the LinkedIn, all of that is great and you should be doing it, but also don't sleep on the value of networking in person with different players and going to clubs. A lot of the opportunities I got were actually, I first get my way in, to like a training session through an email. But then the way I get my next couple of trials was through connecting with a teammate on that team and using word of mouth and using mutual connections to then get myself another trial or another opportunity. So a lot of players, I know when they go into a new environment, obviously it's, you're a bit nervous, you don't know anybody, but if you can get by that, if you can make 1-2 friends, if you can talk with some people, you'll be surprised as to what can come out of that. Because every single football player you talk with at a certain level has access to 5, 20, 50 different contacts. And if you tap into that, then boom, now next week you can go into another team training environment and train with that team.
So Brandao?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think a lot of people here listening know Brandao. Where is he playing now? Ross County? No, sorry. Scotland or something, right? Ireland?
Something like that, yeah.
All right, so I mean, for those of you guys who know Brandao, if you don't Google or YouTube Brandao, before Brandao was a YouTuber, he messaged me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I'm playing for a Conference South team called Burgess Hill in the UK," and he said, "Nick, I've been following your 100-day challenge. Do you want to come and like train with Burgess Hill?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, okay, dude." At the time, Brandao was like, I don't know, probably a few hundred followers on Instagram, and I remember he DM'd me. And I was like, all right, this is a bit sketchy. I don't know this guy. And then boom, I went down to Burgess Hill, met Brandao at the train station. It's like a 6'5" guy, 6'5" guys. Brandao, if you ever meet him, he's massive. Like you don't expect, he's a huge guy. But anyway, he led me to Burgess Hill, and I was training with a team. But long story short, guys, like 2-3 years later now, Brandao is going to all these teams and all these clubs, and he's trialing and stuff. You just never know who you will meet. It's such a small world. Crazy.
Yeah. So you both sort of touched on there as well, like sort of like the importance of like reaching out and messaging people. And like you just said, you're reaching out and you had hundreds of messages, and you went to lots of trials where it didn't go as you'd want it to, and they said no for whatever reason. Throughout that phase of really trying to get there and struggling a little bit in terms of getting in, were there any sort of like moments that you can remember that were particularly low or particularly difficult that you can remember?
Yeah, I have a lot. Do you want me to share one of them?
share which one comes off the top of your head.
You can share hundreds.
Okay. Yeah. So sure, I'll share the first. I'll share the first one that comes to mind. So I got cut from my university soccer team at the time, and keep in mind I went to this university just because of soccer. Like I got a bunch of university offers, great academic schools. I go here for soccer. My first year, I'm a rookie coming in. I don't know anything about like college soccer, what I need to do. So I wasn't that, like I was a pretty skinny kid at the time. And my first year, by the way, to get on that team, usually like if you play college soccer, and I think most North American football players listening to this will know this. If you're like a main player in your city, you kind of have those connections being made for you and you're seen. I wasn't one of those players. So I had to email the coach at the time like crazy. And I remember he ignored me a bunch, finally got back to me. He's like, okay, open trials in August, come. And like, I knew nobody was going to get selected from the open trials. So I kept staying persistent. And I was like, can I just get one training session? Like, I'm really committed to the school. And he replied to my email with 2 things. He said, February 2nd, 4 p.m. Like, that's all he said. And basically was the invite to come out and train with the team at the time. And I went to train with the team. And from that session, they kept bringing me back. Long story short, August comes around when it's preseason, and then we move into college soccer season, and they sign me as the last player on the team. So my rookie year, I get signed, I make it, but have a terrible season in the sense that only came on 1 game. I was a rookie again, like didn't really know what it took. Didn't have the connection to the coaches either. Didn't have any social skills at the time to like just have a conversation with my coach to see what I can improve on and whatnot. But season ends, and then a bunch of our senior players are leaving. So he sits down with the rookies and he's like, okay, guys, you're next in line. And I remember he was saying like, this year, you guys got to step up. You're going to get a lot more playing time. And I was so committed. So now off season, I'm training like crazy. I'm in the gym. I'm doing football training every single day. And then basically training camp comes. I do well. He gives me positive feedback. We move to preseason. I score 2 goals in 4 games, so decent. But he's bringing me off the bench, so I'm still a little bit like I was hoping to be in the lineup. One day before the season starts, he has player meetings, and he was going to trim the roster from like 26 to 23, right? So, and we all kind of knew who those players were going to be. But player meeting happens, and he releases me from the team. And I was so shocked at the time. I didn't even know what to say. Like, I remember I walked into the office, head coach, assistant coach, goalkeeper coach, like you had the 4 staff there. And I sat down, and I thought it was just going to be like this talk about how, the season's coming up. We're looking to go to nationals. And he says, we decide not to take you on the team this year. And I just didn't know what to say. I just shook their hands and I walked out. And basically, the next day the season starts. Now you have university season. I have my classes booked in. I don't have any football, no team training. I'm going to class and I'm super low. I'm super depressed because obviously I had a pathway to, like, I was going to play university soccer and then work my way up. So now that wasn't there, what was I going to do? So that whole semester, I remember I had class, and then right after class, I would go to the field by myself and I would just train. And even if you go back to my Instagram like 5 years ago, you'll find some videos where it's just a goal and it's just me. And I had a tripod set up. And for every video I took, there'd be like 20, 30 sessions where I'd just go without a camera. But you can kind of get the vibe for what I was doing. Like, it was just me. I would take a shot on net, and I would do that for like an hour, 2 hours. And I did that for months. So basically I had no team. I would just train on my own. And this was the time where behind the scenes, I would just shoot out emails, like dozens and dozens of emails, and I would always get ignored. So that was a really low stage for me. Like, it got really, really difficult for a couple months. And that then led to my trip over to Austria. But that was definitely one of the more difficult moments that happened.
But Soheil, let's, everyone listening, let's just let's just take a deep breath, and put ourselves into these shoes. We've all been there, right? Coach drops us to the bench. Coach doesn't play us. We go to a tryout. We don't make it. We get cut to the team. And these are some of the hardest moments to take. And you go there, bed at night, looking at the ceiling, thinking, man, is this all worth it? Or you got your bag before training. Maybe you're not even going to put your shoes on. You're so depressed at the moment. What is making you go out there and say, hey, I'm going to keep doing this? Why would you put yourself through so much this pain? Like, what is making you go out there?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. And I think every player has their own reasons and should have their own reasons if they want to go far in this game. For me, it's a combination of things. I'm a person who, if I set out to do something, I think first thing I'll lay out, I think everybody can relate to the love of the game, right? That's why we all play it. We see, the top stars in the world, and we're like, I want to play at that level. And every time I play football, there's joy and there's fun and there's excitement. And then once the years go on and you start climbing up the higher levels, you start seeing the behind the scenes of things, and you start seeing the politics and certain things you can't control. And then it takes the joy away. So the main thing I would say that everybody can probably relate to right now is the love for the game. So that's what kept me going. But for me, that wasn't even close to like the deepest reason why. The 2 layers a bit deeper than that. One was definitely my parents. So I knew I found something that I enjoyed, which was football. And I knew I wanted to become really successful in life in general. So with respect to football, that's what kept me going, is I want to keep pushing, because the amount of hard work and sacrifice my parents put in to provide the life and provide the opportunities that they have for me, the only thing I can do, the least that I can do, is 110%. I can just keep showing up. I can keep going. So that was a reminder for me in those moments where things got difficult and things got really, really hard. Who needs me? Who am I going to keep showing up for? And I think that's a great question everybody right now can ask themselves. If you're going through a difficult time, if you're going through a challenge and you can't really see what's next, who needs you on their A game? Who needs you to step up? Who are you doing this for? What's the reason bigger than yourself? So that has always been huge for me. That got me back off the ground. Not right away. There's moments where it's a couple weeks I'm down, a couple months I'm down, to be honest. And I think that goes for everybody. So that was, and it still is, my core reason and purpose, and that drives my work ethic like crazy. And the other thing on the side, recently documenting the journey, it's knowing that I have so many people tuning in, and every single time shit would get difficult and I would get cut and I would get benched and something didn't work out, I knew I had so many people tuning in and so many people looking at my journey for inspiration. So if I stopped and I didn't continue going, they would lose hope. They would lose some motivation. And I knew if I just kept going, I kept showing up, I could be some sense of inspiration and hope for them, but then also educate them on what it actually takes, right? Because if you stop on take 5, if you stop on take 10, on take 13, which most people do, you're never going to make it to attempt 28 or attempt 48 or attempt 150, where you finally make that team that you've always wanted to make. So that's what keeps me going whenever stuff gets challenging, which is a lot of the times, to be honest.
A good thing to, sorry, one more story.
Go on.
Dude, these stories are motivational to everyone's listening. I'm crying almost, you know. But like Justin Bieber's manager, I know this is off tangent here, but Justin Bieber's manager, Scooter Braun, I remember watching this video from him. He said he looks for the guy, Scooter Braun, he's a talent manager, so it could be a football scout. He looks for the guy who, in a stadium of 50,000 people, like all screaming, and there's a line of people that want to hit a home run, and like you don't have to get off the base thing when you hit the ball after the first time. If you miss, you can say as long as you want, but the crowd is booing and saying you shouldn't do this, like you're never going to hit a home run, you know. But the prize for the home run is that you win $1 million or something like that, right? Some huge goal. And what he says is he looks for the person that can keep swinging the bat, and no matter if the crowd is screaming that he's crap and telling him to get off, or the people behind him say that they want their chance, he's looking for the person that is always going to swing until they finally hit a home run. Because actually, if you never give up, if you keep going, and in time, maybe it takes 10 swings, maybe it's 1,000 swings, but in time, you will hit that home run. And that's why persistence is so damn wise. Persistence. Well said, Soheil, really. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on. Going back to just what you said before, and this is it's a two-parted question. So, firstly, do you feel like because your parents maybe were a bit unsure about the football route that you wanted to go down, do you feel like that at all motivated you to succeed at it so that you can prove to your parents, hey, look, I know you were unsure, but look at me now, I'm doing well. And also, similar to that, do you feel like because you started your journey on social media on YouTube, that also added an extra layer of pressure so that you could, motivate your followers and also show them, hey, look, you've seen me when I've been low, you've seen me when I've struggled, but I've now succeeded. So were those two pressures good for you to come out on the other side?
Yeah, I would say both positive things. Obviously, the first one with the parents, there were conversations and there was friction, and in the moment, things get difficult. But for me, I knew I had something that interested me. I really liked. I had a big passion for this, and they didn't quite see it. And you can't blame them, right? Because growing up, they didn't have the same opportunity. And by the way, it is a very risky path to take on. Like, straight up for anybody listening, football, if you want to pursue this at a high level, it is a very, very risky path to take on. So you have to be mindful that if you're going to take this on, there's going to be a lot of outside noise in terms of, do you have a plan B? What else do you have going on? So you have to understand that's going to happen. And I have something I want to add on to that after. But the parents definitely, like, I always want to keep going because I know I'm going to get to a place one day where they're finally going to see it. And that moment is going to be super, super fulfilling. And it's not black or white. Like, as I'm going through this journey, every month, every year, every time I see them, they get to see more of what I've achieved. And it's very fulfilling once you get past the initial phases of friction and, disappointment and the difficulty, right? But that's definitely a positive. And then the bigger thing, though, would be the second thing you mentioned, which is documenting the journey. Once I put it out there, the reason I put it out is because I was like, okay, I've been going at this for like 5-6 years. I'm going to put it out because if I'm actually putting it out, there's no way like I'm not going to achieve it. So for me, it was like self accountability at the time. And then once the pressure built up, it got real. Because at the start, Nick, I'm sure you can relate to this. Like at the start, it's all positive, you know, you're putting out your journey. Hey, I'm going here, I'm going here. Everybody's like encouraging you, everybody's happy for you. But as you start to grow, you start getting some more attention, the hate starts coming in and people are starting to judge you and hate on what you're doing. And they don't see the full story of what's really going on. And that pressure exactly 1 year ago today, actually, yeah, around 1 year ago today was very, very difficult. That's one of the difficult timeframes I had, was where there was a lot of hate and a lot of judgment. But overall, you know, documenting this journey with people, I think it's been a massive positive, knowing that, you know, people are looking up to me, so I'm going to do what I can and keep showing up and keep trying to climb the levels to inspire other people.
Do you want to go back to what it was you were going to say before you continued on your social media story?
Yeah, sure. And it would be cool to get your input, your guys' input on this too. So about a year ago, and this is constant with social media, but there's phases of it. There would be so many people like commenting hate and commenting, you know, you're not going to make it. You're too late. Like, this guy sucks. You have all these comments coming in. And obviously as a human, like, you don't like hearing that type of stuff. Once you get exposed to it at the levels that I've been, you set up systems in place and you become mentally tough. And at this point, it doesn't faze me anymore. But I just want to mention that, you know, as you go through your journey, especially as you go older, as you climb up the levels, people are going to call you crazy. They're not going to understand you. They're going to tell you you're not good enough. They're going to tell you you should quit. That's all part of the process. And what you need to understand is, those people, there's usually two reasons why they're doing that. One, they've already given up on their own dream and they're miserable, they're unhappy, so they're looking for an outlet to put that energy into. Okay, so if you have that perspective, it really helps, because then the negative feedback isn't as, you know, negative as you might think it is. It's just that person, you know, they gave up on their dream. Now they're sad with themselves. They're trying to take it out on you. And the second thing is, a lot of people who drop, you know, comments and give feedback to you, which is negative. And by the way, a quick one before I get into this. I think constructive criticism is fantastic, and I think every player should listen to that. But there's a difference between constructive criticism and straight up like negative hate. And a lot of players who might hate on you growing up, it's because they've honestly never gotten close or have been at the level of high elite level football. So they're either younger or they just gave up and now they're like talking shit about you because they don't actually know how hard it is once you start climbing up the levels. And Nick, you went through this. Like, you've been at those high levels and you know what the skill is like. And when I was younger, I was always a nice kid, so I wasn't going to hate on somebody. But when I was younger, I thought like, okay, if you're like 17, 18 and you're not playing at like this level, then you must not be such a good player. But it's not until you actually put yourself into those environments where you understand how difficult this whole football world is. So 99% of people who will comment stuff, who will say stuff to you, they've never been there. And if they get there, they'll be humbled because they'll be exposed to how difficult it really is to make it. And that negativity and humbleness will turn into respect, massive respect. And I've heard that from many players who at first were saying stuff, but after actually trying to make it themselves and actually challenging themselves to the highest levels, they're like, yo, when you went to Germany and trialed in the 4th division, like, that's a really good level. Like, that shit is difficult. Respect, right? So yeah.
And that's why, guys, like, when have you guys ever seen a like good player hate on a player? Like, literally go on their comments and say, hey, you're crap, like, you're not good enough, you should drop out. Guys, it does not happen. I had the privilege of talking to Akin Fenwell once, the FIFA's strongest player, the big dude, you guys know him. And we talked to him and he said a quote that always stuck with me. He said, every professional was once an amateur. So every professional athlete, every I don't know, successful, ultra successful person that you see, successful, they're all at their beginnings. Every big gym dude you see at the gym, they got muscles. They all started skinny, like they all didn't have muscles before. So like everyone starts somewhere, and you're exactly right. It's like the people that hate are the ones that, I mean, bro, they're just not qualified to even hate or have an opinion at this point. So another thing too, Soheil, because I disagree with you a bit. Okay, this is what I disagree with you on. That you think it's a really risky journey. That you said a few minutes ago, football is a really risky journey when you get to the high levels, and I think it's true. I think it is true because when you get to the high levels, there's a lot of things you have to watch out for: scams, politics, agents contacting you, asking for $1,000 to sign with their agency, and then doing nothing. There's a lot of dodgy tryout things. There's so many dodgy things that, as a young player, you just may not know. I'll say this other thing though, or why I don't think it's a risk. If you imagine yourself on your deathbed when you're Soheil, I'm sure you live to 150 because you're so fit and you're thinking about, oh man, when I was in my prime, in my 20s, my teen 30s, whatever it is, man, I just wish I did this, and I wish I didn't listen to Paul, and I wish I didn't listen to my girlfriend Stacy, who said like, oh no, I should stay at home and focus on this, and because I had these dreams, man, I had these dreams, and I didn't do them, and now I'm about to leave this earth, and what have I done? I didn't do what I was set out to do, and that's why I don't think it's the riskiest thing in the world, because if you're following your heart, if you're young, if you really don't have much to lose except really time, then what is the real risk here? And I think that's why you should always go for your dreams, always go for your goals.
On that front, I agree with you. We have different ways of looking at risk in this context. So in the context of like, let's say you're not taking on the risk and you're not going to go and chase this dream, 110%. I know we're both big on Gary Vee, and it's the whole like, at the end of your life, if you didn't actually take every single attempt and you didn't put everything on the line, that feeling of regret is going to be so much heavier than any feeling of failure might be, right? So in that sense, 100% agree. On the side of risk that I was talking about is objectively, if you look at football, and I want to add something to this that I think will be valuable for anybody listening. If you objectively look at football as a career path, and compare it to many other career paths in the world, objectively, it's so much riskier to actually make it to the pro level or to make it to the highest level of that career path. So in that sense, it's risky. And I just want to mention that because, and this is my personal experience, one thing that I've found super helpful for myself is I've been going at this for like 10 years. I remember the first couple of years, I only had football. Like legit, I only focused on football. And, you always think it's great at the start because, you're training like 4 or 5 hours a day. Everything's football. But there gets a stage where like you start climbing up the levels and you get injured and you're out for 3 months or 6 months, or you get cut from a team, or there's some kind of politics that are really stressing you out. And I've talked with so many players too who have literally just had football in their life. Outside of football, they start getting down. They're always anxious about the next training session, about the next game. And we actually had, who was it? We had Thiago Alcantara come into our training session a couple weeks ago with Adrian. And the advice he gave, which I really resonated with, was he, as a current like top player in the world, Liverpool, Bayern, played at Barcelona, he has a passion. He has a couple passions outside of football that he takes on. And so he told us in the training, he has his team training, right? He has his 3-4 hours of focus, intense focus every single day. But outside of that, he goes and he takes on a passion. He goes and he learns a skill. And he adds something else to his life so he can get his mind off of football and learn something new. And I think that's fantastic in two ways. One, it helps you live a more fulfilling life and a happier life as you're going through the journey, because you do want to enjoy the journey too. There's going to be dark moments, there's going to be difficult moments, and there's going to be great moments. But you want to enjoy the roller coaster as you're going through it. So having passions, having something that you're doing outside of football is really going to help with that. But then number two, if you're building skills on the side as well, it's always going to be beneficial to your life. Whether football didn't exactly work out how you wanted to, or whether it does and you just have additional skill sets on the side. And this could be coaching, team coaching, personal training, content creation, making videos. Whatever you decide to take on, that would be my recommendation. For me, in the last couple of years, one of those things has been social media and creating videos. And it's been so rewarding to me because it's helped me enjoy the process more. And it's also helped me take on a skill set where, you know, from the skill set, I get massive opportunities. I build my network, I build connections, I have an extra income stream. So that's one piece I just want to leave everybody with as well, is if you currently just have football in your life, and if it's great for you, if you're super happy with it, amazing, keep going. But if you do feel like at times, you know, it gets difficult, or, you know, it gets really challenging, I would recommend take on a new passion, take on a new skill set, learn something new, because it's going to be super valuable in your life.
Hold on. Sorry.
Wasn't me. Hey, just one. Petacek, drums, had a huge passion for drumming. Juan Mata studied, I think, 2 university degrees while he was at Man United. Guys, there's so many passions. I talked to one Fulham player recently named Tosin. I met with him recently. He said that he has a huge passion for collectibles. And if you go on Instagram and look at Tosin Collectibles, I think is the name, he's not just a Fulham player that plays in the Premier League. He also loves his collectibles, and he talks about like Pokemon cards and trading cards and stuff. Guys, this is a real thing. It's so important. Yeah.
It also, as well, with the whole like Juan Mata thing and sort of like having hobbies outside, it also means that should anything ever happen, you also have these other things that you could lean on. You have other knowledge, other you know, section pathways you can go down. But so then going sort of back to your journey. So talk me through the trial period that you got in Dubai. How did you get it? How did it go down? And what was that process like for you?
So I first came to Dubai when I got invited to an event in Abu Dhabi at the time. And again, this is something that happened because of another passion, another skill set. The event was social media based, so it was for content creators. It was VidCon Abu Dhabi. I went out and I meet these massive creators, and it was so great. And I loved Abu Dhabi. Everybody told me, check out Dubai. You got to go to Dubai. So I had an extra 2 days. I went to Dubai before my flight back, and I thought, if I'm going to Dubai, let's try and test out the football there. So I tapped into my network, and I managed to get a trial with a club. So I trained with that team, and I had one training session with them. It went well. The coach basically said, hey, come back. We want to see you for 10 days. We want to see you in a game plus more training. I had my return flight, so I said, listen, I'm going to go back, but I'll take you up on this offer. And at the time, I was playing in Spain, and I felt Spain didn't exactly map out how I wanted it to. And I saw Dubai, the facilities they had, the coaching staff they had, the players were super welcoming. The level of players they had too. There was a guy who played USL, a guy who played for FC Paris in the past. I really enjoyed it. So that's when I first made the commitment. I want to give Dubai a shot. I want to give it a shot. And then what happened, this was during one of the COVID variants. I was back for winter break. One of my family members got really sick. And so unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to Dubai when I wanted to. So I had to extend this, this risk a bit further back. And that's also a phase where a lot of the hate and the judgment came in. But long story short, I eventually then went to Germany because the Dubai opportunity fell through because I couldn't take it on at the time. I went to Germany, had a couple trials there. They gave me a preseason invite for the summer. This was last year. And it was either like I stay in Germany and I continue to train until the summer, or I go to Dubai and I take a risk. And I decided to contact every single club I could. Golf got back to me, got connected with them, flew out to Dubai, had a trial with them, and the trial went well. And that's when they invited me to their preseason for this season, which is how I got into the club.
So Golf wasn't the actual initial club that offered you to come for trial. It was a different club that you contacted again after.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing. Right. So firstly, a big congratulations, because it's actually really nice to hear a story about someone who, you know, set out a dream, had some difficulties, but you persevered and you've reached, a goal and you're going to keep on going now. So that's amazing to hear. I wanted to ask about something which relates, but is also off the pitch. So doing what you do, it's a big commitment, right? It's a lot of time. Like you say, you're in Germany, you're in Spain, in Austria, now in Dubai. It's a lot of travel. So how do you balance out the life that you live as a footballer and the life that you want to live as a person? Sort of your relationships, your friendships. Are you in a relationship now? If you are, if you aren't, how does that work? How do you find the balance between being a footballer and doing the other things?
Yeah, good one. If you want to achieve anything great, you have to be willing to go out of balance at times. And the key word is at times, because if you're out of balance for too long, that's when you get super overwhelmed. That's when burnout happens. So for me, I've had stages where I've been out of balance for way too long. One prime example was when I was in Spain. I was doing 6 courses at my university, full-time courses, because I want to speed up my graduation. I was playing football in Spain, so I had my team training 4 times a week, and then we would have our games. I would also be doing media marketing on the side. So we had a business with my friend where we would go out and create content for clients just so I could fund things in Spain, because Madrid is quite an expensive city to live in. And I wasn't playing at a level where I'm making a good amount of money just to live off of that. And then also I had my own social media content. So every single day I was creating 1 to 2 videos for myself. And this was all going on at the same time. On top of that, we would go to events. I tapped into the event scene. We'd go to World Football Summit, went to Web Summit, and everything got so crazy. And that was definitely a time where I fell out of balance. And what falling out of balance means is your mental health starts taking a hit. You're not going to be as fulfilled. Certain areas of your life start, coming down. Whereas certain areas of your life are like super maximized. And I would really focus on football at the time and my social media. Like those were my main 2 things. But basically lately, what I've learned from going through that is that you need to set up a system in your life where you can make sure overall you're in a balanced state where you have your football, you have your social life, you have your passions, your skill sets, and then at times you're willing to step out of balance to achieve that greatness. So for me currently, I'm really grateful to have Daniel, who's my closest friend, business partner. He's not with me right now. He's back in Canada. He's gonna come back here soon, but he helps me out with the content. He helps me with the media marketing business we have on the side. There's a lot of things I do behind the scenes that I also don't share on social media, because the social media is more so football related, but I am now transitioning to sharing more aspects of my life. So he helps me out with that. We got a whiteboard back here. We schedule our days, we schedule our tasks. We're starting to build out a team step by step so we can outsource some tasks and get help with growing the vision and the mission. So those are all things that kind of help me out. That stage, touching on social life and relationships, that stage in Spain, I wouldn't do any of that. I thought just grind.
Come on, man.
And when you're
No,
going
man.
through it,
I don't believe you.
you're like, yo, I'm on the grind. I just got to keep grinding and stuff. But looking back, I do wish I would have, and Gary says this too. You wish you would have taken a bit more time to go on the date, to go with your friends, go out with the friends and hang out and stuff. And that's one thing that I'm adding to my routine here in Dubai. I'm having more of a social life. I have my football, which is great. I have my content creation, and then building out a system that helps manage all that has been really important for me out here.
So I'm guessing as well, you fall into a routine as well, don't you? And is that important? So
Yeah.
having a routine in your life, that's really important as well, I'm guessing. So
Yeah, and then I don't get it perfect, right? I still fall into phases where I'm just work. I'm just, because when you have such a big passion, when you have such a big purpose, when you have something that drives you so much, right? The mission at Train Effective, your parents, when you have this thing that really drives you, you're just gonna work, you're just gonna grind, right? But it's important to kind of take a step back and just make sure you have a well balanced routine.
yeah.
Hey guys, but the balancing
Go
is hard. It's off season right now for me, so I don't know if you guys can see. I'm in a ski chalet. But if you look in front of me, look, man, there's people. Look at this. People are skate like there's a mountain, really beautiful mountain in front of me. I can't.
Yeah.
What a view.
Yeah, what a view. But hey, what a view we have at Train Effective. What a view that that Soheil is sharing right now. And these views are inspiring me, man. Like when I do go up that mountain, I'm gonna be more inspired than I was before. So hey.
Yeah, that's awesome. So throughout your journey, or maybe even right now, did you have any big fears? So just things that you were scared of happening. Yeah, were there things that played around in your head?
Oh, 100%. So the fear of not making it. It's not like, you look at all these, even when I was going through my journey, I'd look at, other people's journey and I'd be like, yo, this guy's got it figured out. He's like fully confident in himself. He's going all out. But like everybody has some doubt. Everybody has some fear. It's not about not having fear. It's about having the courage to overcome that fear. So for me, there's been many moments where I'm like, am I going to make it? Like, where is this going to lead to? Am I going to have enough finances to fund this aspect of the dream? Am I missing out on family time at home because I'm out here halfway across the world chasing this dream? So definitely have a lot of those fears. In the last year and a half, 2 years now, last year, it's getting better as time goes. I've implemented mental training into my routine, and not just for football, but in all aspects of my life. I do a lot of self-talk. I do visualization. I do meditation. I do a lot of journaling. And honestly, ever since I've done that consistently, the fears are very, very low. And I'm very confident in whatever I'm doing, it's going to work out and it's going to be massively successful. Like I have no doubt, even here, sitting here today, I know I'm going to be massively successful in, whether it's football, content creation, business, the team I build. I'm going to meet amazing people. I'm going to have amazing experiences. But where does that come from? A lot of it comes from doing the daily practices of getting out your notebook and journaling what the vision is. What do you need to do to make that happen? And so having those routines in my life has definitely helped me overcome the fears. But again, if you have fears, that's okay. Because if you're going to go do anything great, anything big in life, there should be fears. If there's not fears, if there's not challenges, you're not doing anything big. So, pause, look around you and be like, I got to take on something bigger. I got to make a bigger impact. That bigger impact will have fears, will have problems, will have challenges. That's okay. Now it's about how do you overcome that? How do you build your mental skill set, your skills in life, and how do you build a team to take on that mission too? Because anything great you want to achieve in life, you need a great team around you.
It's great to hear that you touched on your being aware of your sort of mental well-being and you're doing things that will help in that direction, because 20-30 years ago, even at the very, very top clubs, mental well-being wasn't something which was necessarily taken seriously. It wasn't taken into account in terms of how do you perform on the pitch, how is your mental well-being affecting your performance on the pitch. So hearing that you're doing that is great. And so would you say it's a matter of, right, can I overcome my fears, or is it a matter of, can I accept my fears, live with them, work alongside them, and just realize that's sort of like everyday things, but I can still progress in what I'm doing regardless of the fact that it's there?
Yeah, I would say you can. I think they both go hand in hand. I think the second thing of accepting them, bringing them to your awareness, which meditation, journaling, having conversations, deep conversations with people, it helps create that awareness piece. Because if you're not aware of your fears and what scares you and what brings you anxiety, then it's always going to be in your subconscious and you're not going to be able to come up with a game plan to tackle it. So I think accepting it, being aware of it, then accepting it, then coming up with a game plan is part of the process. But then I would say the overall goal should be to shift towards that first thing of overcoming it, coming up with a game plan. It's not going to be overnight, but coming up with something where, okay, if this thought comes up, then I'm going to do X, Y, Z or ABC. And then that's going to help over time, over a couple of weeks, over a couple of months. It's going to train my subconscious to be more confident and be willing to overcome that fear.
Dude,
and I think that's a process that, everybody should go on. And it starts with identifying what those things are in your life.
Dude, I think that's a message for everyone listening. I think journaling and having a notebook in front of you to like I call it a mind dump. It's so underrated in 2023 and for people these days because we're always on our phones, always like researching, always getting all this information to us that like you're always consuming on social media feeds and all this stuff, and your brain like you fry your brain. So I was showing my book. I don't know if you could see before, but I also have a journal here. Now I'll write in it probably 4 or 5 times a week, and there's a lot going on in your life, Nixon's life, our life. Like there's always so much stuff going on. So I think it's really important that for me, when I feel overwhelmed, if I take 15, even just 5 minutes to sit down at a table like right now and just get the notebook out and literally write down all the things on my mind and say, why are they bothering me? Why, what is going on right now where I don't feel centered? I don't feel 100%. What is it? And I'll write those things down. And guys, after a few minutes, after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, things start becoming clear and you'll work out this process. And once you get it down, once you get all your thoughts down, it's like, all right, how am I going to fix these things? I'll do X, Y, and Z. And guys, because you're already taking action to solve these things, you feel much better about yourself. Serious.
Yeah, I think you're spot on in terms of taking notes and writing things down, because there's times where I'll go out on a walk and I'll put AirPods in, I'll listen to music, and on my walk, I find myself thinking, and I'm trying to think of content ideas, for example, and I think of this, and I think of that, and I think of this, and then when I get home, I'm like, damn, what was that really good idea that I had? I've just forgotten all the little details about it. So I think you're absolutely spot on about taking notes and reevaluating everything at the end of the week. So I also wanted to ask, so now that you are playing football regularly and you've made it to that pro level, what would you say, what are some of your short-term and long-term goals going forward, whether that be the football side of things, the content and the business? What are some of your goals?
So short term for football, tunnel vision on that promotion. We're currently top 3 in the table. So
Nice.
we're in a pretty pressured environment right now. We got to win every single game moving forward. But I'm confident we're going to make it happen. So short-term goal, we're going to get that promotion. We're going to move up divisions. Once the season ends, that's going to be my time to reflect on what happens next season. And the reason I say that is because naturally, of course, the vision is move up with the club. However, in the UAE, you have certain restrictions with local players and foreign players. And so that's something I'll just have to assess in the summertime, depending on what position we finish in the table. So that's the football goal. And long-term football goal is to work my way up to the highest division in the country, 100%. So that's the long-term. Short-term is get that promotion. Outside of football, content creation, keep growing the pages. I'm going to hit over 1 million followers across, like everything combined. That's the goal this year, like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I want to focus on YouTube a lot more. So I've been doing like vlogs and longer format stuff 1 to 2 times a week on top of all the shorts. I'm going to do events. So speaking, engagements. I love the whole event scene. Like you meet so many cool people and you grow your network. So I'm going to be going out to events a lot more this year and in the future, speaking on stage a lot more. So I'm really excited for that. We'll be growing the media marketing business. So right now it's pretty small. The vision is to get it up, get more people onto the team, and have it be something that I can just oversee in the coming years and have that be something on the side. And also just a fun one I'll throw out because I've been thinking about it in the last couple of weeks, and I've been really enjoying the YouTube boxing scene that has been going on. And combat, like I'm a big UFC fan and I love watching combat sports. I got into it about, I want to say 2 years ago. And it's one of those things that's really helped me develop my mindset actually as an athlete, because these combat athletes, like you study McGregor, you study Usman, you study Charles, like I could go on, Volkanovski, their mindset is elite. So I've been watching like UFC Countdown and behind the scenes and implementing that stuff into my own life. But recently I've been thinking like, it'd be cool to tap into that scene. So maybe sometime in the future, I would love to take on boxing. This year for sure, I'm going to start going to classes, building that skill set. And then you never know, I might need to make an appearance on one of those YouTube cards.
Logan Paul, Jake Paul, watch out, huge. Hey, one thing, so like on the growth side, look,
Yeah.
I'm going to say this selfishly. What do you think about what's going on with Train Effective the last few years? Because you've seen the journey, you've seen it the last 5, 6, 7 years. Like, how do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's awesome what you guys are doing. So there's two main things that have stood out to me. One is the content side of things that are being pushed. You guys are educating players around the world, which is fantastic, and educating players on things that you often, don't get to see. So a lot of people are just posting stuff, but there's a category of content that's unique and that people don't usually post about, and you give people that content. So it's very valuable for, football players around the world to study and stuff like that. So on the content side of things, really been enjoying it. And then your in-person events from
Bro,
a distance.
when are you coming to our camp? When are you coming
So
to Train Effective camp, London?
that's what I was about to say. Obviously, like I had the stop in London last year. I'm planning on coming this year. So I'm gonna need to come visit the house, come check out, see what you guys are up to. Because from a distance it looks cool, but in person it's gonna be a different vibe, right? So I'm excited to
In
come
person,
check it out.
lit. It's lit. Well, every person gets that hoodie that Nixon is wearing on the left right now, and
I'm planning to actually make a stop in, I think around, when would it be? Around May. I think I'll have a stop in the UK.
Okay. Yeah, let's figure it out.
Yeah, we'll have to arrange that. So just to finish off then, Nick, unless you have anything to ask or to add before I go on to the last question.
No, look, man. Well, look, man. Like, I think we have to do a second podcast, like tomorrow. Well, I don't know. We have to look, guys. If you're listening right now and you're like, this has been really valuable to you, make sure you drop in the comments that you'd like to see a second podcast with us again, because I can think of 100 things we could talk about, which would be gems for the audience listening right now. But anyway, just guys, if you're listening, like, please drop a comment, anything, so we know that like this is helping you. But that's all I have to say. Yeah, I really enjoyed it so far.
No, 100%. I think we'd love to have you again as well. It's been a brilliant chat and really insightful. So going off that then, so what would your sort of, and we touched on lots of different nuggets of advice and sort of, guidance, but overall, if you had to talk to someone who is 15, 14 years old, 13 years old, they want to become a footballer, your advice to them, what would it be?
So I'll give some general advice, and then I'm going to give something that's I think is the most powerful thing ever. So the general advice I'd give to anybody is, in your local area right now, get on the best possible team that you can get on. Find the top 3 clubs, the top 5 clubs. Just try and get on the best possible.
Sorry, 1 sec. So I think the audio has gone a bit funny.
Oh yeah, I hear a little bit of muffling.
Not sure if is that from my side?
No, I think Soheil had some audio thing, but keep talking, Soheil.
Oh, is it good now?
There you go.
Test 1, 2.
You're back.
Yeah, okay.
You're back. Yes, there we go.
Okay, so the advice: get on the best local team in your area. So find the best top 3 clubs, top 5 clubs. Get on one of those teams. You need to be in a team environment. That's really useful. And just find the best one you can. It doesn't need to be. It depends on your skill level, right? Do that. Outside of that, do individual training 2 to 3 times a week. You can increase it if you don't have team training, right? But do the individual training, because like we talked about, that's what's going to separate you. If you want to add to that, you can also do group training I have a circle of elite friends that I always train with when I'm back in Ottawa, Canada, and that's really helped my development. So you have your team training, do your individual training on the side. Now you want to focus on building a highlight video and the CV. These are 2 tools that can help market yourself out to coaches, to players, agents, to clubs. At the same time, you want to get in the gym, okay? You want to start doing some type of strength conditioning work, as you go through your high school years, because the modern game requires you to be physically fit. You got to be strong, you got to be powerful. The earlier you start, the better, because if you come to 16, 17, 18 and you're too skinny, then you're playing catch up. So I would add that to your training routine. Start doing mental training. That's really powerful too. And the earlier you start that, the more of a mental edge you have on top of players. What I would also say is, off the field, build your network every single day, every single week. Connect with players, connect with coaches, connect with agents. Just keep making connections, because the more people you know and the better quality people you know, the more opportunities you're going to get. So that's some, I guess, general advice for everybody. And then the one thing I always tell to everybody who asks me, what advice do you have for me if you want to go pro, is I wouldn't do you justice if I just gave you like a single thing, like go and improve your dribbling, or go and improve your shooting or contact teams this way. But what I will say is, this is a piece of advice that can be executed on repetitively, and it's every single day learn about what it takes to make it to the pro level. Okay, so every single day learn about what it takes to make it to the pro level. Watching this podcast is one thing you're doing to learn about what it takes to go to the pro level. Following valuable and informational pages on Instagram, that's one thing you can do to learn about what it takes. Train Effective, one thing you can do to learn
Train
about what it
Effective app.
takes.
Shameless plug. Train Effective app, guys. I'm just showing the mentality. I'm showing the mentality section on the Train Effective app. It's got what you need.
Let's go.
Yeah, all right, go on.
So look, that's what it comes down to. Like every day, every week, you have an opportunity to learn something new about what it takes. And for me, part of that process was tuning into YouTubers, right? I would watch some of your stuff, some of Matt Sheldon's stuff, Become Elite, Brandow's journey, Sheldon tweet. There's a list, Spencer Moeller, like a list of YouTubers I would watch, and I would be like, okay, this is what he's doing, this is working. So every day I would learn about something new that it takes. And if you do that every single day, now you're compounding the knowledge. And knowledge is great, but now you have to execute on what you learned. So that's what I'll leave everybody off with.
That's amazing, and I think that's a brilliant note to end the podcast there. Soheil, thank you very much for coming on today. I'm sure our viewers, I've loved listening to your story and also your advice. It's been brilliant, so thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure to follow Soheil's journey. His YouTube will be in the description. I know I'll be following. And I hope that Golf United do get your promotion. So best of luck there. If you haven't already, if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe to the Train Effective channel. Go ahead down to the description and click on the links to get into our socials as well. If you're on Spotify, make sure to follow. We have lots more podcasts on the way. And yeah, until next time. Thanks, guys.
And stay effective. And Soheil, love it. Great.
Awesome.